Hi, this is Takara,
Hi, this is Mark, and we're from New Science of Success.
and we've been taking you through a series of videos talking about how to deal with the changes that we're all facing right now as we deal with this pandemic. But what we're teaching, what we're sharing about, also applies anytime you're dealing with change, anytime you go through the grief process, anytime you lose something that you hold dear. There's multiple times throughout our lives that we're faced with something where we need to, where we don't need to, but we do. We go through this whole series of emotions. And so in the first video, I shared this little image, and because of the system we were using to record, it actually was showing them to you backwards. So hopefully you can see them forwards today. So what we're talking about, it's officially called the mourning process. You can call it grief, you can call it change. It's all the same thing. But basically, a moment happens in life where there's a shift. Something happens, could be a loss, could be a change, and then it puts you into a space where you go through a series of emotions. All right, the first one, which we covered in a previous video, is denial, meaning that you just don't accept that the change is here. You're not agreeing with it, not believing it, and just going on about your day as if nothing new is happening. But once you get out of denial and into facing reality, you tend to go through three different sets of emotions. And we've already covered two of those in previous videos. One is anger, the other one is sadness and anxiety and those sorts of feelings. So today we're going to talk about bargaining. And then we're also going to cover acceptance. Once you've gone through all of these in any order they happen to show up in, then you can achieve acceptance. So when it comes to bargaining, as I mentioned briefly yesterday in the video, or last, whenever they get posted, in the last video, we we have times when we think, if I could only do this, everything's gonna be okay, right? So there's a lot of people feeling like, if I could only get a mask, if I could only get one of those protective masks, which seem to be nowhere to be found as far as buying them anywhere. If we could only get the mask, I'd feel better, because I do have to go out sometimes into public places and things. Or if I could only get my eggs, right? We can't get eggs. We ordered a bunch of eggs. There's no eggs on the shelves, right? So we're in that place. Gosh, wish we could have the eggs. But some people, I actually believe, this has been my sort of hypothesis or theory, or whatever the correct term is scientifically, that people who hoarders, where they just stuff more and more and more stuff in their home, it's always been my belief that those people are stuck in the bargaining phase of mourning. So whatever the situation was that caused them to go through this whole series of tumultuous emotions, they got stuck. You can get stuck in sadness and grief, and be depressed a lot. That's part of what goes on with that. Also, some brain chemistry issues are involved with depression, but also with anger. There's people that are just angry, right? I think they're stuck in the mourning process in that phase, right? But you can also get stuck in bargaining. So if I only do this, it will all be okay. And I believe with hoarders, if I only buy this new thing, my life will be all right. I'll feel better. And they do for a brief moment. And then that dissipates and they have to go buy something else, right? So we've all probably done something. My craziest, I'll share that later. I'll let Mark share some of his, then I'll share a really funny one that I've done before in my own life.
Yeah, I think one of the things, like right now, what we're really talking about in the loss process is the whole pandemic is, we really have a loss of kind of moving freely, being able to do the things that we wanted to do. For me personally, one of the things, I used to go to the store, the grocery store, more on a regular basis, almost daily, versus kind of buying and having a lot on hand. So I was kind of missing that. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she likes to have a Coke, and so we didn't have any in the house. And one night she was like, if I just had a Coke, I just want to go to McDonald's to the drive through and get a Coke. It's like, you don't really need to have a Coke tonight at 10 o'clock to go through McDonald's. So The next morning, it was early in the morning. I think I bargained for both of us, and I was like, okay, well, I'll go to the grocery store. I don't need to go to the grocery store today. There's one or two things I could use, but so I said I went early in the morning when there were very few people there. Bought the few things I needed, got her some Coke. So we both had that little bit, and that little bit of, hey, if I could just do this, I'd feel a little bit better. I think when you do those things, and even if you don't do them immediately, and you say, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to go to the grocery store at some point, or I make a plan for it. So like this week, our grocery store that we go to is also the pharmacy we use. So we have a couple of prescriptions that were coming up. So I've waited till they all come together. So I've been kind of looking forward to the last few days, and I'm just going to go pick up a prescription and go to the grocery store. So if you think about what a huge change that is in the world, where that's something I would have just never thought of. I would have picked up, a couple of prescriptions, one a day, been at the grocery store 5 times a week. Now it's like I'm looking 3 days out, and it's going to be my exciting day out. It's a whole, but that bit of if I could only do this, I feel better. Right. I'm in acceptance, but I'm also like, boy, it'd be nice if I could do this. And I'm kind of using these events of just the simple daily tasks of the past, of where I would just stop at the pharmacy and the grocery store as okay, well, this is, if I can do this, I'll feel better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I've thought of a few. So I've known about the morning process for a long, long time. And I also teach a bunch of classes on things like this and other things. And so one of the classes that I teach, or have in the past anyway, it's very popular, is called Manifesting Your Beloved. And it's for people trying to draw in or, manifest the man or woman of their dreams. And so in that class, one of the things that I teach about is, in order to bring in something new, you kind of have to get rid of the old, right? The energy of whatever the old thing is. And so one of the things, after a long, long relationship that for whatever reason didn't continue, I go through several things. So I've got a couple of things that I do around this whole process. One of them is I remove every single item that reminds me of that person or has anything to do with that person. I get it out of there, right? So gifts they gave me, I give them away, right? Like I just get rid of all that old energy, because it's like, if I could only get rid of that energy of that person, I'm going to feel better, right? So it's actually a form of bargaining. It's also a way to shift some energy and make space and not be constantly subconsciously reminded of the person and the relationship that didn't work out. But the other thing that I often did way back in the day when I was much more emotionally unstable, like when I was young, in my 20s or whatever. I remember the first time I ever ended a situation where I was engaged. Okay, so I was engaged. I dated this guy for 3 years. There were so many signs saying he wasn't the right person, and I really shouldn't be, partnered with him the rest of my life. So eventually I figured it out, and I broke up. And we didn't get married, but I still went through a massive grieving process, right? I mean, I loved this person. I cared about this person, and I knew how upset they were going to be, and I grieved for their loss too. And anyway, but whenever that happened, which happened a few times, I literally went out and bought a brand new car. Or I took this really expensive vacation. Just, I wanted something fresh. I wanted something new. And so for me, that was my bargaining piece. I didn't do a bunch of little things. I did some huge, big, bigger than life thing, like, a brand new sports car, really exotic trip. Those were huge bargains for me. And they did make me feel good. They made me feel special. They made me feel whatever I needed to feel in the moment. But you wouldn't want to get stuck in that, because you would end up, in a lot of financial issues, right? But those are some of the things that I've personally done. But we've seen all these people hoarding. Now, I think, with the toilet paper, especially the toilet paper issue, but I think some of that could be, if I only have enough supplies, it'll be okay. I think that's some of that. But there's also people doing it because they plan to sell it, and they're being greedy and unkind to their, the other people in their communities. So I think there's a little bit of both of those things going on with that. But that's kind of my thoughts.
I think a little bit about, kind of the hoarding of toilet paper or whatever. I think there's some of this which is really in this loss we this loss of freedom, we have a bit of a loss of control.
Yes.
So by having enough supply, you can feel like, hey, I'm a little bit more in control.
Right.
But to the point where you were talking about, hey, like when you would have a loss, you would do something big like buy a car. Right now, we don't really have those things that we can really go out and kind of expand out and do something different, because we really have to be in the space we're in. And that's the point where going to acceptance now is kind of is very critical, right? So we have to understand the bargaining is kind of small. Maybe it's like, for me, I enjoy, okay, I'm going to go to the store here a little bit later in the pharmacy because I have something to pick up. But then that's really that point of acceptance and kind of what that means. The situation is where it is, and we know we're doing it for a greater good. We really need to flatten the curve so we're not overrunning the hospitals, and we're all doing our part.
Right.
And so in that acceptance, I feel like on the acceptance side, that it's really helpful when we see that we're doing it for something beyond ourselves. We're all interconnected, and it's really important that in that interconnectedness, that the things we're doing, we know that we're being helpful, right? That these things are not, and I know there are people that say, oh, well, we don't need to be doing this, we don't need to be doing that. All we need to do are look at the curves around the world, and where infections are ramping exponentially. We're trying to stop that. We're trying to protect our loved ones. So in a mindset where I've just come to acceptance, it's, okay, this is the everyday life. And so when you're in the world of acceptance, what are the things that you can do around the house that, now as you accept, they're different. And, I live very close to my brother-in-law and sister-in-law and my two nephews, and my nephews are the same age as my daughters. We're pretty much in the circle, the only people we're seeing live at less than 6 feet, because we spend a lot of time together prior to this. Everyone else, it's 6 feet or greater outside, very irregular. So we're doing things, playing family games. We're outside in the yard. We played cornhole the other day. These are things that we don't normally do unless there's like a picnic or a party going on. Right. So in the acceptance phase, you find a new normal, new things to create. Last night they were over and they were playing cards, and it's just, world is different. And there's no point of saying, well, if this pandemic weren't going on, I'd be doing something else. Like my oldest and my daughter, my oldest nephew, they'd still be at college. So they're freshmen at college. There's no point of saying, oh yeah, I'm kind of missing this spring, doing all these things that were going to go on. You just accept and say, okay, well, this is where I am, and I'm going to make the best of it. Exactly. And I think we all have those situations and stories, and it's like, what can you do to create a new normal that you enjoy? Exactly.
And the other thing is to understand the whole process, and with this, everybody is dealing with this, right? Like no one is alone in this, unless you're just ignoring it and you're going about your day, which is like not the greatest idea right now. But, for most people, the majority of people, this has significantly impacted their life, and it's changed how they even think about going to, we got gas yesterday, right? We had nitrile gloves and we had our sanitizers, and we were like, you got to even think about, how do I get gasoline safely, right? So we're really having to change how we think. Nothing is automatic anymore. Everything is, you have to be thoughtful. Mark explained in a previous video how that takes a lot more energy, right? So if you're tired, that's normal, because you're having to think way more than normal. Nothing that you normally used to do that was very automatic can be done automatically anymore. You can't just jump in the car and go to the grocery store, right? We're having to think about everything. So it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. But what I wanted to share also is that the way you've actually reached acceptance is that you think about the current situation, whatever it is, whether it's this pandemic, or if it's, 2 years from now, and it's just, you've had a sudden shift in your life, right? Suddenly you find yourself moving, or whatever happens, you need to go through these emotions, or it's not need, it's like, that's what happens. You go through these emotions. You know that you've actually achieved acceptance when there's no emotion anymore. When you can just talk about it, okay, this many people died today, or, there's somebody in our town. I live in a very small town, okay? And for the longest time, there were no people with this, disease. Nobody had the virus, and suddenly now we have somebody, right? So when anything shifts, I can look at that. When you're truly in acceptance, there's no emotion. You don't get angry, you don't get sad, because it just is. Okay, this is the reality right now. Okay, doesn't mean you don't have compassion. Of course we have compassion, but it doesn't mean that you go into like a depression or you get super angry. When you think about where we are right now, or in these other experiences in your life where you're discussing them later, if something happened to you previously and you haven't really gotten over it, even bringing it up will bring up emotion within you. That means that there's more healing to do. That's what that is indicating to you, okay? So I just wanted to complete the circle by saying that you've accepted it when there's no more emotion. I will caution you, however, good little Southern women, which I am one, we are trained to never show emotion. The world can fall apart and the most awful things can happen, and we can show up in our party dress and smile, and if you didn't know anything happened, you would not know anything happened. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about really feeling your feelings, really letting them go, not stuffing them, because stuffing them and pretending it's okay is actually very detrimental to you. It's psychologically detrimental, and it also is bad on your body. And if you don't express emotion when it's there, hopefully using the tools we've shared with you and that we'll share in a few days with the happy hour thing, then what will happen is you can actually cause disease yourself, right? Unhealed emotion, unexpressed emotion can manifest in the body as disease, as illness, as immune issues. We can't afford those right now, right? We cannot afford to depress our immune system. So it's important to journal like we talked about with anger, or connect to friends, or do whatever you need to do to pull yourself out of sadness. Just deal with the issues as they come, and then hopefully you can achieve acceptance. If you dip back in to any of these others, just know that it's normal, it's okay, and you will get to the other side. And then we're here to help all of you and help each other to move through this.
Yeah, and I think on that point, what Takara is talking about, when you understand the whole cycle, you're going to understand where you're at and where others are. So when you're at acceptance, and there may still be some people in denial, friends of yours, or connections were so interconnected through social media. At that point, you can just accept that a lot of times you're not really able to control or change where someone else is at. You just bring understanding to that table. So as we all have understanding with yourself and others, then we'll all kind of get through this. And what Takara was just also mentioning there, I just want to bring up that every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, we're having a live high spirits happy hour, we're calling it, on our Facebook page, New Science of Success page on Facebook. High spirits happy hour. And really the goal is for everyone to be able to uplift their spirits. Bring your stories, your discussion. It's a place to share, and it's a place to kind of work through wherever, we all come as we are. We may be at various parts of the cycle, but we come in and we share, and we really want to uplift everyone. So that's
Indeed.
every Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, on the New Science of Success page on Facebook.
All right. And so we hope to see you there. In the meantime, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.